I think
Well,
we are.
it looks like it.
It looks like we are, but it's just an illusion.
Right. Now it looks like it.
Oh my goodness. Let me ask my friend. Yo, we
Illusion.
live? What's going on? I gotta ask, are we live? I think so.
We're live. We are. It's official. We are actually officially official. Speaker. Let me see. Speaker view.
Okay, I did it already.
Okay, she's on it. That's why red is the best.
Hello, everybody. We're live. Welcome to the Bedtime Stories.
Yes.
It is Bedtime Stories. We are live, and thank you for joining us. Let's get all the.
Welcome.
It's gonna be a time for some tales.
We are excited this evening for our special guest. As we just told him, one of them, he comes up often in these talks, and his name is Archie Burnett.
Hey.
And our other guest is special in his own way, and he does lots of glamorous things in outfits and not. His name is Mr. Souljah. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here. We're super excited, and we can jump right into it because I know that the time goes fast once we start chatting. So why don't you? What we always start with is tell us a little bit about who you are and why you think we thought you were qualified to tell bedtime stories.
And I'm gonna do it again. Who do you think you are?
Lee, you go first, Lee. I want to hear this.
Okay. Well, I'm Souljah. I'm just turned 55, so I'm thankful to still be here.
Black don't crack.
I have been dancing and performing. Actually, I first started dancing when I was 8 years old, but entered nightlife when I was around 14. So I've been doing it for a very, 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 very long time. And I've worked in all aspects of nightlife, from being a dancer to helping backstage at events, to being a visual artist, a performer, a host, to throwing my own events and parties and nightlife and club stuff. And now I run Black Pride, and I continue it now doing huge beach events and all types of things. So there isn't an aspect or not very many venues here in New York that I haven't worked in or opened or been one of the closing performers for it. I've also danced and traveled the world. I've been all sorts of places around Japan. I've been all over. I've done a lot of things, and I'm thankful for my nightlife career because it's opened the doors for me. As a little Black boy coming up in the Bronx, it's opened the doors for me to be in Vogue magazine and W magazine, and I've done off-Broadway shows. I've been on TV. I've done movies. So I think I'm here because I've just had that exposure, and I've had a wonderful career that's all sprouted from being nightlife and being a dancer and a club kid.
Or like
Wow, so you really know why you're here.
Yes. Yes.
Now, how in the world do you follow that? Love it.
fantastic. So your turn, Archie.
Well, my name is Archie Burnett. I like to affectionately call myself the dancing dinosaur. I have been dancing since I was 3 years old. Originally, not many people know, I'm a visual artist first. I went to school, the School of Visual Arts, to get a degree, but it didn't work out. I found out I was more interested in the art than the actual, all that other stuff that they were giving it in those schools. So between that, dance, I've been able to teach, choreograph, travel around the world, do performances at the Guggenheim, downtown, PS 122, Dixon Place, all of the underground avant-garde performance spaces. I'm the grandfather of the House of Ninja, the first one. The interesting thing is that I've also been put in a very interesting position as a catalyst for the creation of the international ballroom scene in Europe. That was a very interesting undertaking, and it was honestly just being at the right place at the right time and people taking a chance. That's basically what that was.
But what does it entail? I'm curious. I want to know more.
Well, it was this. It was really funny. In Europe, they had these different contests that were very like different kind of, not necessarily all style battles, but they had like specific genres. They had, let's say, locking. They had popping, and they had house. They let me see, what was the other thing they would have? They would have group battles, but they never had anything like Vogue or whacking at all. So now this is a funny story because it wasn't supposed to be me, it was supposed to be somebody else. They were looking for somebody else. That person started the conversation with them. And then somewhere along the line, the conversation dropped. And they were like, well, what do we do? So they started doing internet search and they found me and they asked me to come. So when I came, I introduced this genre to this one specific event called Funkin' Styles, and that was in Germany. And
That's a big event too.
oh, it's been running since 2003. I didn't know that then. And I'm talking 2008 when they asked me to come. So I came, and it was very interesting. Dance is dance. We get that. The interesting thing at that time is, well, when kids learn in a classroom and they don't come up in club culture, there's such a thing as a rhythm problem. People think that the art form, the outside physical look of the thing, counted more than actually being on beat. And unfortunately, that doesn't fly with me or anybody who's part of the culture, who grew up in the culture. You don't put the cart before the horse. So there was a lot of re-educating at that particular time. So I did my demo, and then comes the after party. That's when the magic happened. So here I am, 6'4". Well, COVID got me a little COVID weight on me right now, but back then I was so tasty, I'd have dated me. How about that? So I was brakata, brakata, brakata. So I come to this party, and I start doing what we do in New York. And the kids are like looking at me like he's crazy. Because at that time, I must have been at 30 something years old, I think, in my 30s. Yeah, in my 30s. I'll be 62 January 3rd coming. So, hey for that. Still around.
Black don't crack.
So the funny thing is, it was at this party that changed Europe. Totally changed Europe. I can even remember the song that was playing. It was We Are Family was playing. I was standing in the middle of the dance floor, and I'm looking out to all these sea of kids, these international kids, and they felt what we feel at that particular moment. They felt exactly what we feel when we're in the zone in the club. It was so powerful. After me dancing to that song and dancing with all the kids, I cried like a baby. I cried like a baby. It was the most beautiful thing that I can remember till today. And everyone that was there was affected by that. And from that moment, I was in the privilege or a nice position of nurturing those kids into more education about what the scene is like, specifically what Vogue was like, specifically what club culture is like. Because if the generations are missed, there's a certain amount of information that you miss. So you can't blame a young person for making stuff up if there's no connection. You know, I always say Never blame somebody for their beginning. Never blame them. Whatever got you into what you're doing, you can't blame somebody for that. But what you can blame them for is saying if that's all there is and they're not looking for more information and they run with that. That's what you can blame them for, you know? So that's how that came to be. So I ended up being the catalyst for that. They asked me to judge in different countries. They asked me to advice on ballroom. And here's the thing. I tell them, listen, guys, it's not only me, you know, because you need to reach out to other people to get your information. But what I did not want for Europe was the dysfunction that sometimes greatly happens here in America, because the conditions here are totally different than the conditions in Europe. The one thing that was given to me back in the 80s was the empowerment. I didn't like all that other drama. I didn't like all of that. You know, I even barely walked 4 balls. Matter of fact, my category was body. And like I said, I was tasty, real tasty.
Oh, wait.
Exactly.
I remember this here.
Yes, exactly. I was that tasty. So when I won my 2 trophies, you know, it was grand prize for model's body and runner up for bodybuilder's body. Because back in those days, I was stripping. You know, that's what you do. You get little coins, and you know, that's what you do.
I remember my time.
Exactly. You know, that's what you do. But the one thing that's interesting is that the kids have to understand all these aspects of club life make you who you are. Like for instance, you're not defined, or let's put it this way, you don't get your name, whatever that name is, by saying, hey, you know, I think rocket ship sounds like a real cool name. I'll call my rocket ship. You don't do that. If you're on the floor and they say, oh man, there goes that girl with that red dress, she's carrying on, and it's the thing that identifies you to your environment that people begin to know you for, you know? I mean, red, they call you red because of what? Ding,
Well, I mean, I'm red all over.
ding. Exactly. And you wear it well. How about that?
I'm gonna take this quick moment to let everybody know my hair is naturally red. Thanks. Go.
Exactly. But not hogging up all the time. I'm just saying, this is, you know, this is the thing that embodies what the culture is like. Because you have to understand, people out there, when we're speaking about culture, we're speaking about the smells, we're speaking about how you will be changed from the moment you walk into a space, stay there for a minimum of 8 hours, and then leave. You will be changed and transformed in that time period. You will.
If you let
You will
yourself,
go on a journey.
Yeah, we know it.
Exactly. But you cannot be changed in a classroom for 90 minutes. That way. You'll be inspired, yes, but the kind of effective change that means that has its weight in the culture, you need to do your time. You just need to do your time. So I feel I'm here because I've done my time.
That's funny
Actually,
you said that. We were talking with Ejo a couple of weeks ago, and we were discussing the difference of people like us that came from the scene as opposed to people who took classes and things and then came to the scene. And it's not the same thing.
no,
You know, all
no.
due respect, but it's not.
And mind you, it's nice to come, right?
It's great.
Come as you are. That's what we believe in. We all believe in that. Come as you are. But you come as you are, and you're swimming in the same sea that we're all swimming in. There's something to be learned on both ends,
Right.
you know? I mean, a lot of you went to Sound Factory Bar, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a different vibe upstairs, then a different vibe downstairs.
Yep.
The younger people were downstairs hanging out. We used to call them grasshoppers because they would jump around all the time. That's what we used to call them, you know? But the older people would be upstairs carrying on, and we'd be running up and down between Camacho playing downstairs and Louis Vega playing upstairs, you know? But when those intergenerational people intermingle, there's something special that happens. You know, our people are a very oratory culture that passes on things through physicality and stories. There's something that happens when that goes on. But let me stop. I don't want to keep going because you know me. I'll just brakata, 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 brakata. So, like, you know.
I thought of, like, when you were speaking, I was thinking of the question that I usually ask our guests, and that is like the question of how is it that you got turned out to the scene? Like, how is it that what was it that made this become a part of your life? Because clearly this is all a part of all of our lives, and it's grown to be that way. It wasn't always that way, right? Like, but this is something that has grown to be part of our lives. And I'm always curious about what that journey was for our guests. I'd love to know that for you.
Lee?
Okay, well, I'm gonna tell you, the first taste of knowing that I love dance and knowing that I wanted to pursue something with it in public was when I was 8. I was on a TV show called Wonderama.
Oh, shoot.
Wonderama.
Really,
Oh.
aged myself, but yes. My next door neighbor, who was like my second mother, she was my mom's actually best friend, and they both shared the same birthday. She used to work at NBC, and her
Sandy
son.
Becker? Sandy Becker?
No, her name was Laura.
The other guy?
The guy who was.
Yeah, because Wonderama was the host was Sandy Becker.
Oh my goodness!
I remember those names. Trust me, I'm that old.
You, because I cannot remember his name.
Yep,
I
Sandy
swear
Becker.
I remembers his name. But anyway, they had a dance contest. It was a special show, and I actually won the dance contest. And it was like a big thing. I remember coming back home, and everyone that lived in my building, everybody had saw the show, and it was like a big thing. So, and I loved that experience. So I'm gonna fast forward to when I was around about 12, and I'm thinking this was around 1977, 78. Hip hop starting out in my neighborhood in the Bronx. You hear a lot of stories about PS 100 Park, which literally was across the street from the building I grew up, which is where my grandmother lived on Story Avenue. And all of those buildings and projects in that neighborhood all had community rooms and community centers. And every weekend there was always what we called them jams. And somebody was always throwing a jam in one of those buildings. And I would go. Me and my cousins, we would go, Bronx River projects and over here and over there. So it started out like that. I learned to break dance in the park, in the scene. Hip hop music was just starting. It was rap music back in those days. And I would dance and dance for everybody. And so, and I loved it because at that time you would get your attention. We'd be home and we'd be studying what new moves we could do and all this stuff. And you couldn't wait for the next jam to go so you can get on the floor and show somebody you could do something hot and knew that, nobody else was doing. By the time I had turned 14, I had, at that time, hip hop, there was these parties and jams used to go on in a place called the Kips Bay Boys Club. And I went to this party and I met this guy who was part black and part white. His name was Jude. Jude Bernstein. So his mom was black, his father was Jewish. And here he was in the Bronx at this hip hop party and stuff. And I met him and we became good friends. And but secretly he used to, he was the thug in the street, but secretly he really didn't care. He was open about being gay and the kids used to tease him about it. But Jude also had 6 brothers. So ain't nobody messed with him because they knew you picked with him, you had to fight 6 of his brothers. They were all coming to do battle with him. So I think he had the privilege of being able to straddle back and forth. He always had respect. Anyway, he used to always tell me, yeah, my name is Jude, but add an E on the end and call me Judy. So his name was Judy. And when we were 14, he's one of the people I used to meet up at different places. Never forget that one particular year, in 79, I was 14, when we were going to go to the Zulu Nation party, anniversary party. It was going to be at a club called the T Connection up in the Bronx, on Gun Hill Road. And so instead of us going, he had the great idea. It was like, well, you know what? My uncle or so-and-so works downtown at this club and we're going to go down there because we're going to make some money. We're going to get out of this little, sometimes people would pay us little dollars to back up dance for some hip hop or somebody was doing something. So, you know, that's kind of like my interest into dancing and doing a little public stuff. But Judy had this idea that we were going to go downtown and we were going to get into this club because his uncle or some connections he had worked at this place. Little did I know, we were heading down. We went to Studio 54. But planning this, we planned this. Like, we had on these matching shirts that said disco, disco, disco with glitter all over it. We had our afros all set. Mind you, Judy had an afro too. He had like a blondish afro. And we had seriously, and we had on our Sergio Valente jeans, because y'all know designer jeans was big back then. So you couldn't tell us that we weren't done.
Okay.
We got down there and the street was blocked off. Studio 54 at that time, that was like the heart of the craze of it all. And I never forget, you know, Judy took the lead, honey. He was talking to people, well, you know, I'm going to see so-and-so, my uncle, whatever. Before you knew it, we were at the front where the security guard was standing, and Judy told the guy that we are special guests of Steve Rubel, and that he was escorting me because I'm Michael Jackson's little brother, and they gotta let us in. The guy at the door looked at us and started laughing and just kept on reaching over us and was talking to other people. Jude was carrying on. Jude was not having no fun answers. So Jude kept saying, listen, you're about to lose your job, blah, 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 blah. He just kept going on and on. What we didn't know is he kept saying, Steve Rubel this, Steve Rubel. Steve Rubel was standing right there, like, having a conversation with some other person that was standing there. And he walked over to the security guy and said to him, you know what, just for the drama alone, let them in. And listen, we walked in with, we were so young. We walked in with all this attitude, like, we told you, like, you know, you had us out here. We acting all big and bad. Still didn't know that was the man. We got inside and we was going, like, when you go into Studio 54, you kind of go into this, I don't know if you guys have been during those days, but it had like a little hallway type of thing. And then you go to like where the booths were, where you had to pay. And he kind of whisked us through. There's another security person there. He told the guy to take us upstairs to the VIP area. So, you know, we was thinking we was hot shit, you know. And it was really, really funny because the guy said, okay, thank you, Steve. And when he said that, that's when we both looked at each other and was like, oh my God. We were so embarrassed because we just realized that we just carried on and made a fool.
Judy.
Dropping this man's name and we didn't even know what he looked like. So we got upstairs. The funny thing was that actually that night, Diana Ross was there and Michael Jackson was there and was a bunch of other celebrities there. And
brother.
Oh my God. We were like two little puppy dogs just staring at everybody and the whole thing. But we had a good time and we stayed there till around about 3 o'clock or 3:30. Everybody started leaving saying they were going to this after party. And the after party happened to be the Paradise Garage. And Grace Jones was performing. So we followed everybody in the crowd. We left there and we went down to the garage, not knowing that you actually needed a membership card and stuff to get in. But here goes Judy again, honey. Judy could talk, boy, I'm telling you. And the next thing you know, the people, they let us in. We had to pay a different price than everybody else had to pay. They let us in as a guest or somebody that was there. Somebody that was online, I think that's how it went. Somebody was online told them that we were their guest or something like that, even though we didn't, and we came on in with everybody. And we had the best time, and that changed my life. Going to the Paradise Garage, Grace Jones performing, and we were there until like the next afternoon. It changed my life. After that, I wanted to be a part of nightlife. I was going every week. We went that week to go stand online to get our garage membership. And even that was an experience because we waited on this line outside the garage, and then you go up the stairs and they ask you questions, and the guy asks you what day you want the membership for. And we looked at him, we was like, every day, both days, you know. And the guys turned around and he was like, you gay? I was not prepared for that question. So I sat there and I was stunned. And he's like, are you gay? Like, do you know if you're gay? And I was like, so I was like, no. And so then when you're not gay, you only can go on Friday nights. When you're gay, you can go both Friday and Saturdays. And so I said no, did the whole membership. When I got outside, Judy was like, "Why you said that? Why you did that?" I was like, "Because I ain't gay, whatever, you know." And I was going through this whole thing. So I had a lot of issues about my sexuality during that time. And and make a long story short, I was molested when I was a kid.
Oh,
So I had a lot of although I may have been curious or whatever, I had a lot of issues around my sexuality, and I didn't come to terms with that until way into my 20s. In fact, I was even married twice.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, with that being said, I literally went back the following week to go get my garage membership again. I told them that I lost it and I wanted to get another one. And so I was prepared this time for the question. I could get in whatever night was going on. But the guy definitely took me by storm, unapproached. But anyway, that was my opening experience, was that first night at 14 going. And then after that, Judy started taking me to different little clubs and places, and his uncle was kind of like a promoter, or used to work at different places doing security, doing different things. And so he would kind of get us in to different places, and then people saw that we could dance, and then they liked the way we dressed. We always came, coordinated and doing a lot of stuff. So and people started just offering us money to do stuff. I started to see was a lot of discrimination was kind of going on at some of those places, which really bothered me, that it was Black music. It was music that was coming out of the Black gay clubs. It's Black music. And some of these spaces that wanted us to work, it was like, hardly no Black people were there, and they really treated us different, even though we were part of the talent.
wow.
Which I'll never forget, one of the spaces I had worked at the time. Oh, I'm even going to go. There was a club called Bentley's. I don't know if y'all remember
I
Bentley's.
remember
Yeah,
Bentley
of course.
very well.
And I remember we worked at Bentley's, and we came in, and I knew Bentley's from the radio station. WBLS used to
Yep.
parties and stuff like that. So I thought of it in my mind as being a Black club. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
That's what we know. Go on.
Right. But so I remember this time I went there, and these white promoters had asked me and Judy to work and kind of dance. And so the party was predominantly mostly white, but it was club kids and party kids and stuff. And so the other people that had got there that was also working or hosting or whatever, they walked in with their bags and stuff. When me and Judy showed up at the door, they unzipped all our stuff. They started pulling everything out of our bags. They even went into like my boots and stuff and pulled up the bottoms of the boots, the cushions and stuff.
Wow.
Took it up like they were looking under stuff, and we had to stomp our feet, and the security guy was shaking our pants and take off your hat. And then when we got into the dressing room, I was so upset. It's like you just went through I'm repacking my bag.
The right,
I was disheveled, and I felt a way about, now you want me to smile and work after you just treated me a certain way. And then it was like me and Judy was looking at each other going, well, if we're working here and you're treating us this way, how do you must treat the Black guests, the Black and brown people that come here as a guest, if you're treating us this way and we work here? So then, long story short, we walked out that night. We didn't work that night. We had made the decision. We were pissed off about it. Told the guy it wasn't even worth the money. And then we went on this whole crusade about people that wanted to hire us, that if you wasn't respecting us, or your club wasn't really open for diversity and Black kids to go, then we didn't want to work there. And not necessarily going to say that we made a big impact, but I think we pressed upon a lot of promoters that it didn't make sense. You playing Black music up in here, Black gay music. So if you don't respect Black gay artists, then you don't need to have us in here. You know what I mean? It's just the hypocrisy of playing our music, but then you mistreat us trying to come in. And we stood by that for a long time at a lot of clubs and a lot of places. And I think sometimes it actually got us other bookings at places. We have worked everywhere at the time. So long story, that was my journey, was basically getting out, going to the clubs, partying, going to different places and having the experience. And then I kind of fell in love with house music, which was very different than me growing up under hip hop. And I kind of had this two thing going, but hip hop clubs never gave me the feel that I got when I went to a dance club.
Right.
You
That
know,
freedom, you're gonna have that freedom in Bronx River as you are gonna have.
Right.
absolutely, absolutely. And ain't no shade. There was gay people that started hip hop. I'm not going to out anybody because that's not who I am and do. And I respect everybody's choice of.
Say it. No, I'm just.
I'm glad you said that because I was getting ready to say, now you know you want to spill the tea.
Well, but I'm not. But the reason why I'm kind of saying that is because it wasn't a comfort zone, and it was all about, you know, hyper masculinity, and sometimes it was the irony of some of the people that were pushing that, and you know that this is the same person that was just trying to hit on you or trying to get you to come do something with them at the whole time. You know what I mean? So
Oh, you doing?
Right. Come hither, darling. Come hither.
Right.
Come thither. I like that. By the way, have you seen your boy yet? Still, Judy. Judy, have you ever? Whatever.
I was like, where's Judy Bernstein?
So let me tell you the story about that. The reason why I'm sentimental about telling that story right now is because in April of this year, Judy died from the coronavirus. He got very sick and died in April. And I myself was hospitalized with it in March.
Yes, I remember.
Almost 4 weeks. And so I had only been out of the hospital a week. And strange enough, he had sent me a message saying that he had heard what I was going through. And he said that he thinks he has it too, and was kind of asking me what the symptoms were. And I told him I had kind of like these flu-like symptoms, but I couldn't breathe. It was hard for me to breathe or whatever. I'm also asthmatic too. So, and he went to go to check into it to see what was going on to the emergency room. And he passed away the following week.
Wow.
And
sorry to hear that.
Very quickly. And so that's why, to me, this year, I never really tell that story to people, but this year was important because if it wasn't for Judy snatching me up, getting me to go all these places, and the fact that he was so a fighter, he was open and out about who he was, or just had that attitude about I don't give a fuck. That was basically how he walked around in life. And probably some of it was because like I said, he was part white. He had some privilege behind that. But he definitely identified as being Black. He would tell the person that don't be twisted by the Bernstein part of my name. You know, he felt very comfortable about identifying as Black. But it was Judy that took me to a lot of the clubs, or that was my partner. If I said we were going to go here and go there, he was the person that took me there. And he was also a person he knew that I was struggling with my identity and stuff that I was going through, and never judged me, never made me feel uncomfortable about any of it. In fact, we never really even talked about it until later on in life, when by the time that I never really say coming out, because I think coming out is for me means the moment that I accept myself. I never had to announce it to anybody or say to anybody, I'm bisexual, I'm this, I'm that. It was never that for me. It was the moment that I realized for myself that I had an attraction to both men and women. And of course, a lot of that was happening for me during the 80s. And of course, HIV and AIDS was changing the landscape of things. And so it impacted me tremendously. And again, I also met Willie around the mid 80s. By that time, Paradise Garage actually closed around 85 or 87, sometime around there.
The last party was
it 85 or 87?
87. I think
it was 87. And because that's the year when I met Willie, actually, and we were both booked to do an event in Tokyo. And at that time, I still was doing a lot of hip hop dancing and still doing stuff like that. So I was in to do a Jean Paul Gaultier show in Tokyo, like an urban street segment of the show. And so was Willie. and but he was doing Vogue. So it's really weird that I tell people all the time, I didn't meet Willie here, even though we were traveling in the same circles. We actually met over there. And long story short, I performed. I did my little thing and performing and everything, and people were clapping and stuff like that. And Willie came over and patted me in the back. Good job, kid. And I was looking at him like, okay, like who's this? You know?
You're funny.
And then he came out to me, and baby started doing his thing and stuff. The crowd stood up and clapped, and I was like, okay, he just made me know it, who he is, okay? And then we backstage, we just, both of them started talking. We said we both were from New York and the whole thing. And life is funny that way. When we got back to New York, now we started seeing each other all over the place, you know? But it took us to go all the way to the other side of the world to meet up and realize that we both were from the city. And we started seeing each other at all these different clubs and places. And it was Willie who introduced me to going to a ball, you know? I had been to a few events, actually. When I thought about it afterwards, I had been to a couple of ball events, but I really didn't know what I was experiencing, like the contest and the whole thing. But it was Willie who really introduced me to the scene, and I went with him to an event, and I was turned on because it's like I had an instant family. Came to the door, Willie said, oh, this is my brother Lee. Next thing you know, somebody said, oh, well, if he's your brother, you're my brother, and this is, you know, my father, so that makes you my uncle. And so I walked out of there, all of a sudden I had an instant family. So it was one of those things for a person like myself at that time, who was still trying to find himself and find my comfort zone. All of a sudden I had this instant family and instant friends, and every time I was going places, now I'm running into different people, and you build your name, like you said. And I wasn't Lee Souljah back then. The honest truth about the Lee Souljah part came when I had breast cancer, and I was hospitalized for 6 months fighting breast cancer. People thought that I was going to pass away. So everybody kept saying, you know, you're a soldier, you can fight this, you're a soldier, you're a soldier. The irony of it was, when I got out of the hospital, I used to do celebrity products at Macy's, fragrances. And Beyonce was my first client. She had a fragrance called True Star with Tommy Hilfiger. And when I got to meet her, and we had this whole meetings and stuff about the launch, and what they were, you know, training us on what they wanted us to do for the launch. And I was the manager over that fragrance. She said, they had the song out, I Need a Soldier. That was the record Destiny Child and them had out. And she was like, okay, here you are, you my soldier here. And it just kind of clicked that everybody was already starting to call me that. So I adapted it and just said, I'm Lee Souljah. And then shortly after that, you know, 9/11 happened, and I did these parties called the Soldier parties at the place called the Octagon. And I kind of turned it to people and said, instead of you trying to meet a date, you need to meet your soulmate, but your soulmate is your soldier. And that's how I kind of started my own little, so to speak, the name and what it meant. I gave everybody a different meaning, you know, to what it was.
Yo, that's a bedtime story.
Fun facts.
That's a bedtime story, for real.
Right.
Interesting too, Archie. I want to add this to this, what you were saying also, Archie. You know, one of the things that I know a lot of people don't talk about when we talk about the European ballroom scene is, and Red, we have to take some credit for that, because we did House Dance International for a few.
Did we now?
That's right. And
I'm holding that for my own bedtime story. I'm holding that story for the bedtime story. So stay tuned, people.
But I'm gonna say,
go on, tell them.
A lot of the international dancers and stuff actually came here took a lot of the classes and met up at the competitions for House Dance International. When they went back to their countries, they ended up booking some of the ballroom kids to go over there and teach classes over there.
Oh, yes.
And stuff.
Yes, they did.
And when those kids went over there, they started naming those kids. Well, you know, so-and-so was teaching, you know, like my son Noonie was teaching, Noonie Karma. All of a sudden now there's kids over there with the name Karma, and Andre and the kids over there. And now you got Miss Rahis and all of that. And this is how it blossomed and started to grow in all these different areas, because those people were coming here and meeting the kid and bringing them to train and teach over there. And I just wanted to say that because Archie, you're right about it just being at the right time, that all of these international dance festivals were happening and coming, and then whacking and vogue began to be a part of that, there where they
Right.
weren't before. They
Boy,
now became to be an important category added to all of these
Yes.
street dance festivals. And Red, we need to take some credit for that because we helped introduce that to these kids when they came here to New York to the House Dance
it's
International.
absolutely
Just
true.
wanted to say that because people never give us credit.
That's wonderful. I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
As you should.
And I will say, you know, after House Dance International, after we started, after the first year, it was first or the second, we did a big event in Italy brought over myself, well, not me for dancing, but Javier,
Mhm.
Lockaroo for whacking,
Yep.
and Future for what was our category? But they brought over the winners for that year.
Right.
And I got to go as well and escort them, which was just amazing. But yeah, that happened too. Yes, thank you. And
Right.
it was they ate it up. It was great. It was wonderful. It really
And
was.
Javier and Future and them introduced ninjas and Lockaroo and
Yeah.
all the they brought with them their house names
Mhm.
and their dance experience. And all of a sudden, you know, they started naming kids over there with affiliations to us here. And there's other pieces to that puzzle too. I'm gonna say people like, you know, Carmen Extravaganza lived over in Spain and she did a lot of working and stuff over there in Spain and stuff. So there was always some small contingents of ballroom people that had moved overseas.
Right.
But the real burst of ballroom came out of these dance competitions and them traveling here and meeting people and bringing them over there to start teaching classes. It boomed right at that time.
Especially with the whacking, I would say that, you know, people like Archie, Tyrone,
Yes, absolutely.
were very huge instrumental catalysts on bringing whacking, and then therefore, like, so people, there's a definite correlation between whacking and vogue, right? Because of the way that they look, the way that the movement happens, some of the music, and then some of the people that
Attitude
did.
involved.
Yeah, you know, the funny thing is, you know, we like to call them sister styles because basically it's the same demographic, different dialect. You know,
Yeah.
one is from the East Coast, one is from the West Coast.
Right.
One has a history that's popular in the 80s, but goes back to the 70s. The other one, 70s, but has late 60s involved in it. You know, it's real interesting that, you know, it's not even it's a strange kind of logic that naturally Vogue would be born in New York because as far as New Yorkers are concerned, New York is the fashion capital of the world. Even though we know it's like Italy and Paris, but New Yorkers with trend setting and all of that has always stayed on the pulse of fashion. So it's no wonder why Vogue wouldn't be born in New York City as opposed to acting in California because California is considered the movie capital of the world.
Right.
And the inspiration behind that is these old actors and actresses and movie stars and the old tap dancers and that whole Hollywood feel, you know, of the glamour and the punking with the you know the attitude and all of that. No wonder we would be born in the West Coast, you know. But when you think of the demographic, it's the same demographic, the LGBTQ kids that are thinking, that are looking at the, let's put it this way, you know, when you look at something that's like like you have a dream to say, wow, you know, I'd like to live like that or be part of that or have those things that I equate with a better life and existence, acceptance, what have you, you know? When you look at fashion, you go, "Oh man, I'd love to have live that lifestyle with the clothes, the money, the car, the this, that, and the other." It's something to look forward to. To say, well, if I can't look the part, you know, if I can't acquire these things, you fake it to make it, right?
Right.
You know, how many of us go to the bootleg shop and get the Gucci or the this, that, and the other, and like, yeah, I'm styling it, You know, not paying the Gucci money, but the idea is that you want to feel it. Clothes had a feeling to make somebody feel that they belong to something that's established, that's considered successful. You know, in California, the main industry is entertainment. Most of the young people over there would look at these movies and these how would you call these musicals and things like that, and then I would love to work in that industry. I would love to, and a lot of the kids, they did anything they could just to be part of that, whether they were trying to try out to be dancers or trying to take class in certain studios to be seen, or in the underground clubs that were in LA that you may meet somebody that may hook you up. I mean, there are thousands of stories like that. But I always say same language, different dialect. That's just the way it is. I mean, I was lucky. I've been dancing since I was 3, according to what my mom says. And because
Well, what was it that turned you out, though?
oh, well, me have to tell you this one. No, well, here's the thing. I've always dug music since I was 3, right? Back in the day, there used to be a radio station, 77 WABC, that was on the AM station.
Yeah.
But the black station was 1600 WWRL. And that was on the FM station. So what used to happen is I used to go back and forth because my mom made this mistake, and in retrospect, she would think it was a mistake. I think it was a blessing. She bought me this little plastic radio that smelled like, how when you have the rubber ducky, it smells like this kind of bubble gum pop. You know what I'm talking about? Those old, it's like a plastic, like the shiny yellow plastic that was a certain smell. It's almost like soap. It smells like soap. The radio smelled like.
Smell of those little bubbles that you used to make. You'd be like
Exactly.
Goop on the end of the straw and blow out.
Exactly. It smelled exactly like that. And it's crazy. You can remember that stuff,
Yes, you can.
So the radio smelled like that. And I would play this radio all the time, and I would dance in my room because I was raised as a strict Seventh-day Adventist. Nothing against religion, people. Nothing against religion. For me, it felt like prison where I was in. And I think how you adapt this to your daily lives is something that you grow into. But my parents came from the West Indies to here. So I'm first generation West Indian American. And they chose not to involve themselves in American life as to see what's going on here in America with whatever scandals or whatever things that you can fall prey to. They operated from a position of fear. And when you do that, unfortunately, you transfer those fears indirectly to your children. So they couldn't really help me out here. When I was home, it was the West Indies. When you're outside, you're dealing with everything in America. But they couldn't help me with the outside. They could only help me or try to make sure that I stayed like this on the inside. So you could already see the problem right there. So according to my mother's interpretation of this faith, you can't do anything that's not related to God. So that means you can't dance if it's because, as my mom used to say, you're going to laugh at this one. Archie, go to your God playing that bongo. That bongo, go to your God. As in bongo drums, meaning dance.
Yeah.
My mom may love it to death. But go to your God. And she would tell me, she would say, last day generation children have no respect for their parents. And I'm going, but Mom, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not killing anybody. I just like to shake my ass. So what's the issue? So that already started dissension. So now I was already dancing in my room because my teachers were American Bandstand and Soul Train. Now, I'm in New York now, but I'm learning from American Bandstand was a Philadelphia sensibility, but only from the white kids, because at the time, they didn't put the black kids on the show.
Right.
So I'm looking at these dances, picking up, I'm a child of the 60s, the jerk, all of that stuff, Boogaloo, all of that stuff. So now, I was born in 59. So when I'm seeing this, I'm practicing in front of the TV. No YouTube. So we have to, you catch whatever the show is running maybe for an hour. So I got real good at picking out people in the thing and grabbing a little something or my interpretation of what I thought was, because obviously you only can get an impression and then you try to do it right away so that you kind of get the muscle memory. And that's early training at a young age, but knowing it's something that you want. So now I'm doing this. Then 1971, Soul Train comes out. But I didn't come to Soul Train until 1974. So when I see this thing now, you have to understand, people in the audience, back in those days, positive images for black people were not the thing. They weren't like so popular.
That's right.
You were either the maid or you were the villain or this, that, and the other. So here it is. We're in 70s, we're looking at TV and we're seeing all these beautiful black people with afros, all shades from light to dark with afros, dancing. I mean, dancing. I mean, dancing. Not like, oh, I'm beating, I'm doing it. No, that's what the joke was. Because when I would turn to look at American Bandstand, I'm looking at all these cats dancing off beat. And when you turn to Soul Train, you can groove in it because you know what that is. If you grow up with music, you know what that is. So those were my two teachers. Now, mind you, I was forbidden to dance. So I would sneak this on Saturday because for the Seventh-day Adventists, the Sabbath is Saturday. And Soul Train came on Saturday. So I'm saying, how do I do this? So I would sneak the TV on because the show was for an hour before we go to church, right? So I had to sneak this on and try to get it. And, Archie, you don't have the TV on? I said, no, mommy, no. And I'm doing my thing, right? So sometimes she would bust me and it would start a lot of trouble, Then what ended up happening was that because I started dancing around the house a lot, my mother had this bright idea, well, let me put the kid in ballet. So I was 12 years old. And it was the Brooklyn Academy of Music in BAM that they had the little ballet classes. So my mother signed me up for tap and ballet. So I go in there, right? So they start to teach me my little backbreaker and stuff, and I just didn't understand the discipline thing, and I was so self-conscious and I mean, I never got naked in front of people before, and I'm like changing in the room and I'm like, this is strange, but I hung in there until I got outed. Let me explain. Back in those days, we didn't have like how the kids have the backpacks. We had attaché cases, like square attaché cases. And my class was after school. So what I would do is I would pack my red ballet tights with my ballet shoes in the briefcase with my books. So after I'd go to school, instead of coming home, I'd go directly to the ballet class and then come home. We could travel back then by ourselves as kids, and not really worry so much about being snatched off the street back then. So I go and I open my briefcase and these were they were brighter than your shirt. They were brighter than your shirt. These were flaming red. The kids saw my tights.
Superman
My
type.
tights out. Ran around the classroom. Sissy, 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 sissy. I was so hurt. I was like, mommy. I don't want to go back. So let me tell you something. Had I stayed, excuse my French, I'd have been motherfucking fierce. I would have had another skill set. I would have had another.
Already are
Thank you. But I would have had another skill set. But here's the thing. I think these things in life teach you certain things. When your life is ruled by the opinion of others, you never get to live your full version of you.
Absolutely.
And I did not know that. I think that had to happen.
As a child, that's hard to comprehend.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I spent so much of my life trying to to fit in other people's impression of what they think I should be, as opposed to me saying, "Well, Archie, what do you like? What do you want to do? What do you?" This is where it comes full circle to turn me out. I get my first job, 1980, right? Cinema 5 movie theaters. Now, mind you, I've been going to the little R&B clubs, Bentleys, Talk of the Town. What was the other one? Regine's, getting dressed up in my little suit and stuff. I was barely even 18, getting dressed up in that. But you got to understand, I was watching Soul Train. So sooner or later in the night, my leg is going up in the air, right? In a suit, whoop, rip the pants, you know? It was always a thing where I ended up sweating too much and I'm like, but I want to dance. I want to feel my full expression.
Right.
But when you do that in a New York setting, dancing with a Californian flavor, the first thing that happens in those commercial clubs, spaces, they do this.
Right. It's because that was like those clubs were like R&B people, Bridge and Tunnel, like
Exactly.
they weren't the underground.
No, not at all. Those are the, hey girl,
That's
hey
what.
girl, you want to dance? While somebody's touching your hand, and you're like, oh,
Now,
Right.
I'm so glad you said that because here comes the tea. I get my first job in a movie theater. I'm working in a movie theater. Till today, I say this man's name. He saved my life. His name is Eric Jeter. Eric Jeter was an usher. Eric tells me, Archie, yo, I'm going to go to this club. But the catch is, this place I'm going to go to opens at midnight. And I was accustomed to clubs closing at 2, maybe 4 a.m. It opens at 10, and you only have a certain amount of time, 10 to 2 or 10 to 4, that's it. And then go home. And those clubs were shady like that. 4 o'clock on the dot. I don't care if you're in the middle of the group.
The hell out of here.
Exactly.
Yep.
So he tells me about the place is called The Loft. And I go, really? Okay. So I go. So me, knowing that I was going to go because he told me about this beforehand. So I get my little suit, right? I get my little suit. So I come there and I'm seeing everybody like in baggy pants and, duffel bags and stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess this must be the place. So I'm waiting outside. Friends of friends get in. He met me there. He sponsored me to get in. I go inside, and next minute I know, the place is going crazy. People are slapping the walls. They're slapping the rafters. They're screaming. This is where I get that scream. Because I got it from there. People are screaming, and I'm thinking something's happening. But this is what turned me out. I went downstairs, and downstairs the lights are up. Upstairs the lights weren't on 99 Prince Street. I go downstairs, and back in those days, a cipher wasn't created for a cipher's sake. It just so happened that people were chilling around, and they gave you space for you to do your thing, and it was more so a thing of they joined you with their energy, watching you do what you do in the space.
Right.
So here it is. I come down there in this suit. There's a guy by the name of Screaming Demon, which I found out that was his name later, Screaming Demon. Takes the very same attaché case that I was telling you about. In the rhythm, he takes the case and he throws it across the floor. Case is sitting up like this. So there are people dancing, and the case conveniently goes between people. What? And I'm watching this thing. I'm going, but it felt like a movie. It's like people are dancing, and here's this suitcase just going in between people because he threw it from one side to the other. And I'm going, this is not regular here. Next minute I know, I'm doing my thing. Not one person made fun of me. Not one person made me feel uncomfortable. That day opened my eyes like that because I'm expecting the DJ to spin and mix records. And when David played one record and then he let it finish and then played another record, and I'm saying, but I've never heard any of these tracks on the radio. but what is this? Come to find out, he had a methodology. If the producer made this record this way, he wants you to hear this record from the way that it starts to the way that it finishes. That's the journey that he wants you on. I don't have the right to scratch it up and create something else because you don't hear the vision of the artist. So I thought, wow, this is like a music appreciation course. I'm hearing different things from the Rolling Stones to experimental music to R&B, but the vibe was like nothing I ever felt before. That turned me out. So now I become a loft baby, right? So I'm in this bitch like crazy. Next minute, they say, oh, Archie, but you got to go to the garage. It's a garage. Is it actual garage? I said, yeah, you got to go to the garage. So now, like I said, back in those days, I was cock diesel. Bam, 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 bam. I was so fierce, I didn't have to get a membership. Noel was on the door. Noel took one look at me.
He was like,
Love
come
that
give me
man.
something.
Till today. Till today. I love that man. He looked me up and he smiled and he goes, I had it, right? I go in and then I experienced something I never saw before. To me, the garage was kind of like the Studio 54, the underground, to me. You know? Because when you go in there, that's the first time I ever saw a unisex bathroom. You know? I'm like, yo, what? And that speaker, if that speaker could talk, things that people used to do behind that speaker, I'm going, I've never been to anything like this before. They even had a movie theater in there. They had a roof. I'm going,
That's right.
Turned me out. From that day, every underground place I hit, every gay club I hit, Ice Palace, 57 West 57th Street, Crisco's gagged me because when I went in there, I'm like, that's a Crisco can.
A real can of Crisco with a DJ booth was that. That's right.
The whole DJ booth. If you look online right now, the
Yes,
big giant ass Crisco can and the DJ's on top of the Crisco can. But let me show you how naive I was, right? I'm so naive. Matter of fact, Woody's the one that took me there. I'm so naive. I'm going, Crisco? Why the fuck would you use Crisco in a can like that? Not knowing what Crisco was really used.
I didn't get it either when I first went. I didn't even know what the connection for Crisco and the club was, except Crisco and disco. Okay, they sound alike. I did not get it. I did not get it.
Right. Vegetable shortening?
I didn't get it.
You know, Buffy, bring the lubricant. Oh, I get it. Okay. I get it. Okay, I get it. You know? But then there was the cock ring. Then there was the Peppermint Lounge. Then there was Electric Circus. This was a club with a 3-ring circus inside of that bitch.
That's right.
With the merry-go-round, with the LED.
Wow.
Come on, Archie, tell it. Better days.
Yes,
Tell
with
about
the LED in the ground around there.
That's right.
Then there was Better Days. That's when I met Kenny Carpenter. Thank God for Mike Stone. I would go up to the place that was near the Savoy. I think it was the Warehouse. Near the Savoy that Mike Stone used to promote.
Up
that part.
In the Bronx. That came up a little later. Yeah, in the warehouse, right?
I would go there.
Do you remember Bonds? Remember Bonds International?
Bonds International. Yeah, and that bad boy used to be a men's clothing store. I remember when it was a men's clothing store. Then it burned down.
That's right.
Then they reopened it as a club. Mm-hmm. All of these places, when you do club life, you do all of it. And once I got a taste of that, I went through everything, through baseline. The one club I missed was Melons. I missed that. Melons, I heard so many great things about Melons, and I missed that. Then I started getting real crazy because Manhattan was like the neutral thing. So I was addicted. So I'm saying, well, where else was there? So then I started to venture out. Then we started to do New Jersey, which was Zanzibar, Club USA, 88 Evergreen. Those places, I was like, oh, this is tasty. Everywhere that there was a party, we went. Let's put it this way. Back in those days, we just wanted to dance so bad, we didn't care where we were. We did the Mud Club. We did Danceteria. We did the Roxy before it became Webster Hall. Back in the slam dance days. I want to be sedated. You know, that kind of stuff. And the funny thing was, all of that was part of the culture. That it's not only that we did one genre, we went everywhere, anywhere that we, because in New York back in those days, you can go to any club during the week for free. And that's what we did. Might be Ice Palace on Wednesdays, might be Thursdays, it might be Electric Circus, it might be Peppermint Lounge on Tuesdays. Even the S&M joints. A friend of mine, Walter Gibbons, he was amazing. I love this guy. He used to work at Barry's record shop when I was, because not many people know. I went to school for art, and I was supposed to be graduating out of School of Visual Arts. And down the block was Barry's record shop. So Barry's record shop, he was the one that was spinning the records back in those days. You spin the records, people come in, what's that? I buy it. And I would hate to go in there because I'd be leaving with all these records and spend all my money. So he asked me to come to the Anvil.
That's right.
Anybody who knows what the Anvil is, it's a hardcore S&M joint. Matter of fact, it's the same building that Mars 13 is in. Was in. It was in that.
That's right. Sure
Funny
was.
story, and I'll make it short. I go into this party because back in those days, because we were so lively, people would ask us to just come to start the party because nobody wants to get on the dance floor first. I'm like, shit, bet. So we would just go and start the party. So I come early. Walter Gibbons, he's the DJ. I come in. The first thing I see is sawdust on the floor, the whole floor. And I'm going. So me dumb thinking I'm coming like from the loft. Oh, they're using sawdust like baby powder. Yeah, right, Archie. So I come in and like, look at this. So I'm saying, okay. So the crowd slowly comes in. It's a gay club. I get it. I didn't know how gay, but I get it. So I come, and then next minute, I said, well, man, I got to go to the bathroom. Come to find out, here's the dance floor. There's the bathroom. No door. Like the dance floor is open to the bathroom and the stalls and all of that. And I'm going, still not putting two and two together, right? Really dumb. Nah.
I'm very excited for this revelation.
Really dumb. What really did it for me was then a cat comes in a leotard, right? And he decides to wear no jockstrap. So lo and behold, the fella's gifted to his knees, right? Then I start clicking. Then I go upstairs to see Walter. I said, Walter, what kind of club is this? It's not a regular gay club. So he said, Archie, I'm telling you, don't go downstairs. That's all I needed to know. That's all I needed to know. I stood with Walter like glue, like right there. You know, like how, if anybody ever knows, this is the funny thing. If anybody ever sees me in the club, where is Archie usually? He's either in two spaces. Before the Happy Land fire, Archie was always by the DJ booth and the speaker. After the Happy Land fire, Archie is always by the exit. Think back at the Sullivan Room, right? Where was my spot? Right there at that door, as soon as you come down. Right. That was my spot. Right? And for club culture, people have to understand everything in New York changed with that Happy Land fire. You can look it up, Happy Land. Some guy was jealous, threw a Mazel Tov.
I remember. I think we all remember.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. It was traumatic and devastating, you know.
For all of us, for the whole scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. It made you really think about the safety of the spaces that you were in where you felt so comfortable and safe.
Yep.
Yeah,
like a lot of us would go to clubs to be comfortable and safe and free and feel like, okay, I'm here, I'm safe. I can put my bag down. That shit is good. I can be over there. Good. And then that happened. It's like, yo, you know, you get a wake up call.
Yep.
I have to speak about the party that these ladies ran. I have to speak about that because we're in this moment right now. To me, at that time, for the young people, that was their garage. That party that you guys ran at Funkbox, that Funkbox was those young people's garage. Now, what I loved about that party is that it was intergenerational.
Yeah.
What started to happen that was weird about that party is that the other elements started coming in, pickpocketing and doing dumb shit like that. You know, that party was
Yeah, but
well.
that shit down real fast. Trust me.
Oh, hello, for
But
real.
we weren't having that.
Exactly. And the cool thing is that as a family, because we see each other every week, this one will rat on that one and rat on that one if you're doing something to upset the flow. So if somebody
Absolutely.
pickpocket, oh, we beat that
Absolutely.
ass. That ass is going out right there. That's how it's supposed to
Absolutely.
be. You have to protect your safe spaces. So
Yeah.
anyone listening to this, whether you're in your own countries and you're trying to develop something to keep something going, you have to protect your safe spaces. And that means, yes, bottom line, if there's an element in there that will threaten your safe space, you address it right away.
Yeah.
You don't
I,
let it
that's
breed.
one of
Go
that's
ahead.
one of the reasons why, like, even though like there's a big difference nowadays between what clubs want, right? Which is
Yeah.
why I think as an underground community, we struggle with spaces because they're looking to pay rent. They're
Yes.
looking for people to, buy bottles or spend money, and we're creating a vibe, and we're
Yes.
creating an environment for dance. And that's not necessarily a high revenue situation,
Mhm.
right?
It's
But
great for the bouncers. Great for the bouncers,
the
right?
thing
They love us. The bouncers love us.
there's a fine line. So there's two things that I've experienced. One, the club owner that is like, no, I'm interested in the money. And then I've also met club owners and managers where they're like, no, the money is cool. However, we love your crowd. We don't have to work hard. They take care of us. We take care of them. We don't ever have to worry. There's never a fight. That everybody's family. If somebody gets drunk, everybody's taking care of them.
Yep.
Stuff like that. And
Thank
there's value in
Thank
that.
you. Thank
Well,
you.
just that just brings to mind for me, uh, down on off of 8th Street, there used to be a club called Club Love. Remember
Right.
Club
We know
Love?
it.
Yes.
We were just
Yes.
talking about it.
Off
Yep. And
McDougal.
before it was Club
McDougal.
Love, it was say it
It's on
again?
McDougal, right there.
Before it was Club Love, I actually remember it being called Vamp, and I think it was the Lion's Den, if you really
Mhm.
go back. But when it was Club Love, um, I am and who I used to call my mother, Troy Parrish, used to do a party there that we used to call Amen. And the reason why we had picked that place is because the owner wasn't interested in bottle service and I gotta have all of this bar guarantee and this whole thing. He was a person, he invested so much in that club. The
He did.
sound system,
Wow.
everything that went into that DJ booth, to how it was laid out in position. He wanted to make sure it was a comfortable atmosphere, that was a cool place. And
Mhm.
the fact that it was in the village, down there near NYU
Right.
and you know, just the underground community,
Yes.
that was more his passion. And he put so much into soundproofing it and all these different things. So it's very different than some of the other places that I promoted and do a party. And before you come through the door, the first part of the conversation is the bar guarantee. What are you keeping? What are you doing? What's your door like? What's your crowd like? What kind of music do you play?
Yeah.
What's the age demographic of the people that's coming here? Now you got to go through a whole resume of setting up the party before you even open the door. And I think that that's the sad revolution to me of nightlife, to me of graduating from the 80s to the 90s and to where we are today.
Mhm.
When I first was going out in the 80s, very much like you said, Archie, we had, first of all, the number of places to go.
Oh,
We could hop from East Village to uptown, downtown. There was always a place to go and multiple places to go.
that's
And
right.
there were just parties and there were after parties. And so I loved that about New York. There was, although it was segregated, I'm going to definitely say segregated, and race also played a part of it as
Mhm.
well. You know, you can go one place and because a certain DJ that you might have loved might have been there, but you will realize you experience a different side of the culture Might be the same music, but what the kids were carrying on and doing in that club might be a little different than something you're going to go to on the west side or down in the village. And I love that I was able to vibe in all these different sets and atmospheres, and I was able to actually work. So, you know, when I started to realize that there was power in how I was dressing and expressing myself, and people were actually booking me for that, then that became more powerful to me. You know what I mean? So I could go, you know, to the east side, to the kids that was, you know, into punk and Devo and all of that stuff. And, you know, I would head down the canal jeans and buy all these antique clothes and people sitting there and cutting it up and sewing and stitching and safety pins and the whole thing. And who cared? We looked like a rag doll, but when we got into the club, everybody was like, "Oh my God, you look amazing."
Actually, that's why I met Tyrone in iBus. iBus, that
so and so it just was interesting. The 90s bought mega clubs, these huge clubs, you know. So then that time was, you know, when I was, you know, working under the clubs that Peter Gation had, which was Club USA, was Mars, was the Tunnel, was the Palladium, was Limelight, you know what I mean? So at that time it was fabulous because, you know, I could get in any of these mega clubs and we were working and doing stuff. It was unbelievable at that time to know you could, at any given time, you can go to any of these clubs and thousands of people were up in these clubs at this time. And that was, New York will never, well, I hate to use the word never, but just the feel of what the 90s was with all of these mega clubs and mega spaces. Definitely Giuliani put definitely into that with his quality of life movement. And I think that's a part of history that people don't really understand, that it was a definitely, it was a mechanism around trying to change what people's perception of what New York was, this whole quality of life movement. And it killed nightlife. And they used the cabaret laws to help do that, you know.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that one of the things that changed New York City nightlife, and I said this before, I really believe it, like the thing that stopped door shade, right, was bottle service, right? That is what stopped door shade. So it no longer became, let's find out who's the flyest person to be in the room. It became, who could buy a bottle, you're going to get in.
Right. Bottle service was a result of Giuliani's doing the quality of life and shutting down those clubs. Then it began to be all of these club lounges and stuff. And those lounges, they had all of these areas, and then it became to be about bottle service. They wasn't trying to be having you keep buying a drink by drink by drink. You want to sit in this little lounge area and look like you were celebrity, like everybody wanted to be like what they saw in the videos. Now you got to buy bottles. The 90s definitely ushered in this whole movement of, from the clubs to these lounges, these little spots, you know, became to be this hot thing.
Right. And to go with what you're saying, Lee, part of that, what he did is, because they made it so hard to get a liquor license, and then it became so expensive, that is the reason they had to put in the bottle service. We can't even assume that they wanted that. They had to do that to make the money, to pay the rent, to pay the bills, to, you know, it was just a trickle down effect.
Yeah. I swear, I wish if I won the lotto, that's the one thing that I would do. I would make sure, I really would make sure that dancers would have a space, that they can do their thing, fill all the codes, soundproofing, all of that stuff, and allow us to build, because everybody wants to go where the vibe is. I don't care if, even these clubs that say bottle service, this, that, and the other, if the club ain't happening, Barbara Tucker says it perfectly. When people come to these parties, they feel like it's happening, but it's not. It's not. It's not.
Not when you know what it looks like.
Thank you.
It's not there.
Thank you.
This ain't it.
Generation doesn't have anything to compare.
Not like the other one. There you go.
They don't have anything to compare it to the way that we do. You know, we know what nightlife was, it could be. And so for them, this is all they know. So of course to them, they think it's so hot. And I'm looking at it like, oh no, baby, it's gone.
And here's another thing. When you're spoiled with the best sound systems in the world, nothing else compares. The first thing out of our generation, what's the first thing that we say when we're even thinking about doing a club? We're not thinking about a space. We're thinking about that system.
You hear
That's
when you
Floors,
the line going into the club.
Yeah, the system, the floors, and then the DJ that can work the system properly.
thank you. Thank
Right.
you. That's it. These are the ingredients of how you make a space. And trust me, when you get the right vibe that comes in there, it's a no-brainer. It takes care of itself.
Yep.
Matter of fact, trivia, because I don't even think about this because you live it. How many years did you guys run Funkbox?
Well, see, Funkbox and Cynthia, I was over at the Soulgasm,
Yes, that's
but
right. That's
but they
right.
go together. They go together.
Since 2008, and we're
Look
still
at that.
every
Look at that.
Sunday.
And Soulgasm is
still-
2005. 2005.
That is something, think about it, unheard of.
Yeah.
Unheard of. To do what we do in the genre that we do what we do, to go that long. Most clubs in New York City have a lifespan of 3 years.
Yeah.
That's a lifespan. 3
We
years.
outsold a lot of those clubs. So we've been around 12 years and we've been in 20 clubs probably in that time. You know, and you know, I'm really fortunate and grateful to be able to be a little bit of part of it, you know. But I do have a question for you. I want to know what was the journey that started you with these extravagant costumes? Because I know I've seen you sometimes and I look at you and I'm like, wait, oh shit, that's Lee under all of that.
Right.
So it started for me, I'm gonna say like late 80s, early 90s. I had went to I started going to these underground clubs actually with my dear friend Judy. And I like that everybody, the way they dressed, everybody expressed themselves through fashion. It wasn't so much about the dancing and stuff, right?
Right.
Which is where me and Judy came from. We were dancers, you know. Everybody was hiring us because we were dancing. This began to be people was judging us because that's, you know, to be honest, that's when the club started having this whole thing around the guest list and this whole thing about getting in, and they wanted to create a certain atmosphere and everybody in the club had to fit a certain kind of look. So when we got there and people was judging you before you even got in the place about how you looked, and realizing that this fashion thing became to be sort of like a power, that we took so much time into how we styled ourselves and how we dressed. And I'm going to say that in that period, this whole notion of being androgynous, this was the era of, think of the 80s, you think about Prince, you have to think about David Bowie, and you think about all of these artists that, you know, even Grace Jones, she gave you androgynous. And so we always began to dress that way. You know, like I said, it was a journey for us to go down to antique boutiques and Canal Jeans and go to all these places, and we get in the house and we start cutting and dishing, and this will be cool to put this on this and so stuff. And then, and in its own way, that's what got us in the door to the places and stuff. And then people saw that, you know, we could dance and do stuff. And then, you know, as you start meeting more people, people began to realize that we had a following of friends. So that was another thing. You know, we didn't have cell phones and texts and all that stuff. It was, everybody would meet up and say, where are you going next week? What you going to do next week? What party are you going to? You know, everybody gave out flyers and stuff. And you kind of tell everybody, you know, well, next Saturday, it's going to be this hot party over here. This is where I'm going. And then began to realize everybody wanted to be where you was going. And I think that the owners and stuff began to hone in on that there were certain key people that people wanted to be around, and like a group, you know what I mean? So as the 90s came in, it began to get much more serious. And I'm gonna tell you, I went to the Limelight. There was a party at the Limelight I went to. I can't remember the circumstances of how I ended up going there, but I went to the Limelight, and I never forget that I met Lee Bowery and all the kids were in there. Michael Alig and Kenny and James St. James, who's a person that I'm telling you, these are some of the people, Ernie Glam. These are the people that I first met. And when I tell you, they took looks to the extreme, like they were really dedicated to a look. Lee Bowery, I mean, with pins through his face and all kind of stuff. And, you know, I had my look on, but me compared to them was like, I was still a baby, still kind of learn. And I remember Lee coming over to me and he was like, let it go, let it go. And I didn't know what he was talking about. And then he was like, let yourself express yourself, let it go. It's like, it's not the first time I saw you. And he says, I know you got it in you. And he was kind of crude, you know. He sat on my lap and farted. He sat on my lap and farted. I didn't even know what to do
What?
after that. Yeah. Lee Bowery was very crude. But I love the way he expressed himself and the whole thing. And the fact that he kind of told me that, he's like, looking at you, I know you got more in you. And so the next week when I came back to the party, we thought it was a theme. And I thought about it and we really went in on the theme. And when I came through the door, everybody wanted to take our picture and it became to be a big thing. So then I began to realize, okay, this is something different and it was new. It wasn't a lot of Black kids doing club kid stuff at that time. I remember Taboo. I can remember, it really wasn't a lot, maybe like 5 people or so that I would see in that particular circuit. And I think that sometimes too is because those kids, a lot of them had money and they could push the limits. And whereas the rest of us live in the real world, we knew where we had to travel back to and how we were living and stuff. But it began to be a fun thing. It began to be a fun thing. And then I started getting bookings based off of that. People said to me, you know, would you come and host this? Or, you know, I have a fashion show going on. This is the theme. Can you dress in that theme? And I was like, hey, no problem, sure, you know. And it took off from there. And I began to realize that I had this skill of turning trash into treasure or creating my own fashion out of, you know, vintage clothes and old things and stuff. And as I got older to what I do now, it's become much more sophisticated, obviously. And then there's ballroom, which ballroom made me turn it up by 100. When I first wanted to walk, because bizarre was the category that I always was amazed with. And I remember when I first decided that I was going to walk, because really is the one who kept me from walking in balls for a lot of years. He was like, don't trust those kids as far as you can throw them. When I decided I wanted to walk, and bizarre was the category, I remember, and my good friend, Vaughn Allure, said to me, said, the look is great. You look fabulous, but you need, I had this whole outfit on and I had all these flowers on it and roses. And Vaughn was like, you need 100 more flowers on it. I was like, 100 more flowers? He was like, 100 more. And so I kind of got it from there. And I was like, okay. And the more that I turned it up and got more outrageous with it or just doing, then I began to challenge people and say, you know, people say, oh, you know, the old expressions, you know, pink is for girls and blue is for boys and tulle is for girls and this fabric is for this fabric and that fabric. And I began to start challenging people and say, who created these rules? It ain't in the Bible. This is man-made rules, these fabrics and these things and these articles of clothing, and who said a man can't wear it and who said who and whoever couldn't. So I began to just start throwing things on and being creative and yeah, so it kind of just grew out of that. And to, like I said, it has taken me to so many other places now, and people start to ask me to do themed parties and themed stuff. And I capitalized on that because when I went to open my first club in the early 90s, there used to be a loft space down in the area where, you know, where Canal Jeans, which used to be, which was Bloomingdale's and stuff down in Soho.
Yeah.
It was a friend of mine's, a guy that I had met, and he had a loft space, but long story short, he owed some taxes and he was getting out of here instead of paying his taxes, trying to head to Europe. And he handed the set of keys to me and another person and said, y'all can utilize his loft space. He said, as long as you don't knock down any walls or put no holes in the walls, y'all can do whatever you want to in the space. And I started to throw these monthly parties there. And in these parties, they were themed parties. So me and my friend, we would go out, we would do candy cane parties and the red party and cotton parties and whatever you could think of, the chicken parties. Like we would just go and decorate and put all this stuff in there and stuff. So by the time I did the third party, the place was packed. We used to pack up this loft. We were on like the 6th floor of this loft, and the freight elevators used to be so slow, kept people up and down. Well, one time the police came up, and we thinking it was people getting ready to get off, so we can, charging people and stamping them to come in, and it was the police that came, and they were ready to give us a ticket for running this kind of like under this, serving liquor or whatever, running this club. The guy was really nice to us, but he was like, "You got to do something about all these people in the street." And we were like, people in the street. So then we went to the window and looked out, and we could not believe the crowd of people that was outside waiting for this freight elevator to get upstairs to our party.
Oh, wow.
But the police shut us down and stuff like that. And we had to close the party. The interesting thing was somebody that was in the party used to work at 21 Hudson Street where the baseline was. And the baseline had just opened. I'll never forget, because Junior Vasquez was doing his party that I'm saying his party was like a Friday night, Christina Visca, and then we're doing a party there. And he offered that he would give us a night and move the party there. We picked Tuesday night to do our party there at Baseline, because Monday was my boy Troy Parrish used to do Sugar Babies over downtown. Over in the East Village area was on Mondays, and that was a hot party, was no giving that up. Tuesdays, everybody used to go to Tracks on Tuesday. Kilimanjaro's used to be Tracks party, used to be Tuesdays. And that was just started to come to an end. And so we took Tuesday, we figured those kids that we used to go out on Tuesday were gonna need some place to go. And that's how I ended up opening and promoting my first party. And it was at Baseline.
Wow.
And it took off from there. Then when there was a flood, because Baseline was underground, and those of you who have went there, then it was downstairs, and you had one of those street pipes would burst or something like that, and it flooded the club downstairs. When they pumped all the water out, unfortunately, I was on my night. They had just finished pumping all the water out. You could still smell, when everything is wet, you have that kind of moldy smell.
Yeah.
So we were trying to get all these candles and stuff to put down there to get rid of that smell. Well, the kids started coming in there. Baby, there were rats running around up in there. We never seen so many kids coming out of there screaming, ah! They were carrying on. And at first we thought, like, the kids were just screaming because they had a good time. Like, they were running out of there because they were in there, honey. And not too far from there was the police department. Somebody had called the police. Police had came. Here we go again. We being shut down.
Oh, God.
And I'll never forget, I'm going to say his name, James Saunders, who used to do a lot of clubs. James Saunders said to me, "You want me to help you find another space?" He was like, "You're kind of new to throwing parties." And he was like, "These owners, what price they're going to quote you will be different than what they're going to quote me, who he was doing it back then, James and Fred Pierce and them." And then I had another friend that was there and introduced me to another guy. And that's how I ended up starting to become a promoter. So I went from hosting these little parties and being the kid and the dancer to now I'm throwing parties and doing stuff. So it was like a slow progression. But as I started to do that, more and more people were interested in coming there because I had these costumes and these looks. And people used to be like, "I can't wait to see what you look like." But I also used to host these gay urban parties, these hip hop parties. And it used to make me laugh how the kids we're all gay. And they would come in there and they would whisper in my ear, like, "You look good." And I'm like, "Why are you whispering?" But they didn't want to get it down their end, they the thug, they didn't want to be saying that they was into me and all.
God.
So they act the party.
They gotta give the effect,
But Lee, what did you do with all the costumes? What do you do with all those costumes? Do you recycle them or do you
I do recycle them, but I've been saving them for a big project of some stuff, and I'm not at liberty to say, but let's just say I'm trying to put it into an archive that's going to go hopefully into the Smithsonian, African American Smithsonian, and to the New York Historical Society, who has approached me about that era and stuff that I came out of with my costumes and stuff.
Okay. I know where you're going.
Black Pride with ballroom. There's, we don't really have, ballroom celebrated in 2019 was became 150 years. So we have to really talk about, that really being one of the first safe spaces for the LGBT community of color, and something that started here in Harlem, and the fact that it gave birth to the house and ballroom community that we now have today, that is now a global phenomenon. And I was able to get the governor to issue a proclamation acknowledging how it has affected popular
Oh,
culture.
really? That's great.
And that in itself has opened up the avenue for a lot of museums to want to curate what that looked like, what ballroom looked like over these periods of time, from those other generations to what we have today.
That's bigly.
So that had made me start to look at the costumes and stuff in a whole different look. And I've been trying to talk to key people about, saving their looks and wanting to donate it to me, so that the idea that the same way that, film stars, they curate those costumes,
Right.
we should be curating those famous costumes that, now we got all these TV shows and stuff.
Tell it.
And people want to know, that thing people make fun of me. I had wore the blonde bob on Pose, and so it's things like that unbelievable are things that should be saved. And these costumes that I wear and I win grand prize with, and I also use them for nightlife.
Where did you have the blonde bob?
On the TV show Pose.
I just wanted to make sure that the people heard you.
Oh,
I know.
Yeah, so
I whip my hair back and forth. I whip my
Right?
yes,
I would like to ask both of you a question. It's a simple question, but it's something I've added weekly. And it can be about music. It doesn't have to be. It's just about you. What right now, at this moment, is your guilty pleasure?
Oh my God, candy corn.
Oh,
Right. Candy corn.
candy corn.
God.
Candy corn.
Wow, you are one of the few
Story
people I
behind
know
that.
that like candy corn.
Yeah, that's the story about when I was a
Oh.
kid. Back in those days, my mom, she wasn't so big because the Seventh-day Adventists don't believe in all of that Halloween and stuff like that. So the only exposure kids get to that is at school,
Yeah.
like elementary schools and stuff like that. And this is the first time I'm seeing this thing, candy. They give you these little, how do you say, like little,
Taquitas.
yeah, like just a little thing with different varieties and stuff.
Good
So,
for making the word, y'all.
You know somebody out there doesn't know that's not a real word.
But in there, it's sweet tarts, it's razzles, it's candy corn, maybe a licorice or two, right? So I'm tasting this for the very first time, not knowing it's all sugar, of course, but just the fact that it's chewy, the fact that it has this taste, no lie, till today, I just bought a 10-pound bag of candy corn.
Wow.
I gotta watch it because I don't want to get diabetes and stuff. But I hate to say it, that's my guilty pleasure. I'm sorry.
Don't be
But I want
sorry.
you eat it like I'm gonna eat the little white part, then I'm gonna eat the little yellow part.
Baby, the sad thing is
believe that they taste different?
if I buy a bag like this, in one sitting, half of the bag is gone.
How
That's
many
why
do you
I-
eat at a time?
Oh,
Like, do you take a bunch or is it like one at a time?
oh, it's bad. I take like 3 at a time,
Oh, wow.
so I can savor it in my mouth.
Hit all ends. All right.
That's me.
Lee,
Guilty pleasure, because he came up with that answer mad fast.
but obviously he's been thinking about it. Like, you know what?
Hold up, and I'm gonna prove it. Lee, say your answer. I'm gonna get the evidence.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna say I have two guilty pleasures.
Okay, go.
So if you're talking about food, I've been in love and killing it with oxtail. There was a time that if you told me about eating an oxtail, I would have looked at you like you were crazy. I was not eating anything that was called an ox's tail. Wasn't happening. But baby, somebody had gave it, and mind you, I was married to a Jamaican woman, and I don't even know, she never cooked oxtail. She knew I loved stewed chicken, never ate oxtail. Finally, I went to somebody's house and they were serving it, and I didn't ask what I was eating. And then I found out afterward it was oxtail, and I was in love with it. I mean, like sucking the beat off that bone, like you would not understand. That I literally had oxtail tonight. I had oxtail at a friend's house yesterday. I love me some oxtail. That's
It's
a damn
so good,
shame.
isn't it? I
And
can
that's
tell you, I'm going to tell you, Lee, I only started eating oxtail about 2 years ago, and now I can make you a hell of a pot. Make you and you know what? You might have just given me what I'm going to make for the snow tomorrow.
Okay.
That might be it.
I just got turned on to it the last couple of years also, and I'm telling you, every time that's how I judge a West Indian restaurant now, because everybody's oxtail ain't the same. But when
No,
I
it's
get in
not.
there, honey,
And Latin oxtail is not the same as
Yes.
Caribbean.
Wait,
Yes.
you talk about oxtail?
Yes.
Jesus!
Yes. Yes.
Jesus! The gravy on the oxtail them. Whoa!
Woo!
Whoa!
Absolutely, absolutely. And then my other guilty pleasure is right now, and I think it's because of the pandemic and stuff, is that I have really been investing so much time in trying to learn, or watching all of these films around the background, these documentaries around the background of all of these amazing places, and hearing the stories of stuff, of Studio 54, of knowing, I went there and I had a good time, but what was the story behind the story? You know what I mean? Of the things I've seen. And it's funny because I was just telling Sin that I just watched this documentary about the Bee Gees.
Yes,
And
I saw it last night.
Yeah, and the documentary is excellent. I love the Bee Gees.
Where is it?
I think it's on HBO.
On YouTube.
I think it's on HBO.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you what got me in it, because a lot of things that people don't talk about as African Americans or Black, people of color, they necessarily don't teach our history, right? We have to teach it amongst to each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being LGBTQ is even a deeper thing that no one necessarily, the history books and stuff, don't include that. And so many things were born out of Black gay culture, and you can clearly see how so many things were appropriated from that culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so watching that documentary, it was good to hear Nicky Siano talk about the gallery and his spaces, and understand that that disco and dance music was born out of Black gay culture. And to hear the people that worked with the Bee Gees have them talk about it, and how it was greed and profiting and creating disco, and just the whole thing of how disco was destroyed, literally destroyed, with this whole movement of disco sucks. And if you guys remember when they, in Chicago, when they had at the stadium after the game, they blew up all of these albums and stuff, and really had the people kind of talk about it. People were just bringing albums. They weren't even all disco records. They were just Black music. They showed them there was Stevie Wonder and all these people. They weren't. This wasn't disco records. And so people were saying, "Oh, was it attack? Was it about race?" I said, "No, we're going to take that deeper. I think that it was purposely destroyed because this is something that was coming out of Black gay culture."
Right.
The reason why I say that it was an attack on Black music, because Black music categories still exist. There's still R&B, there's still soul music. Black categories of music of genres are still around. But disco was destroyed, ended. It was destroyed. And that gave birth to house music. House music was never, ever created as a genre in itself, right? House music is part of dance music, it's part of club music, it's part of electronic music. It's never been, and that is intentional, to make sure that was so much power out of a genre of music was disco. I mean, think about how much money the Bee Gees made. That was, at that time, it was the highest grossing album ever in the history of music. And so that in itself is just so much to even talk about, the whole Studio 54 and the whole dance culture, even talking about the real estate. I even get angry when I talk to people. I say, no, because the white community worked hard to landmark where Saturday Night Fever was filmed at, where they had the disco and stuff. It's a Chinese restaurant here. And every year for the anniversary, they turn that place back into that damn disco with the lighted floor and the whole thing. But
Wow.
where is the garage? And Studio 54? Studio 54 building is landmark and it's still there. But the Paradise Garage, Better Days, all the places that were Black institutions are gone. We did not work to preserve that. And so those are kind of conversations where I'm looking at the behind the scenes of how does the world know? People say garage style music. It's known all over the world, but where is the Paradise Garage? Building was torn down,
Yeah.
and we didn't save it. And so it's stuff like that. It's been me kind of going behind the scenes of so many places. You know, somebody that had passed away. You talked about Peppermint Lounge, Archie, and you know, I remember, you know, the kids talking about they were at Gigi Barnum's. Which is what the lounge was. That was what it was before that. And I know that
with the trapeze.
That's right. That's right. You didn't know how many of the girls, we call them the ladies of the community, transgender women and stuff, used to work here.
Exactly.
And this was before the club kids, when they first started hiring us to be entertainers in those spaces. So I think the birth of where I came from doing club kid stuff started from those spaces, those little places and stuff. And so I wanted to know the history of some of these venues and places and even balls, because you know we started throwing balls in some of these venues on their off days or off nights or on a Sunday, or when the club closed, then the balls, you know, the kids would be
whenever you can get that space, right?
Right, absolutely. And so
shame moment. Shame moment.
There you go.
I love it.
Really bad shame moment. Shame moment. Shame moment.
Autumn mix. What does that mean?
What's the autumn mix?
Right. What does that mean?
It has green candy corn.
It has candy corn that looks like a pumpkin. It has chocolate candy corn. It has regular candy corn.
Chocolate candy corn. I don't even know what to make of that. Wow.
And I want to add one more thing to what I was saying too. Another thing I think a lot of people don't realize is out of the birth of from ballroom, a lot of the famous DJs that we talk about in house music, Frankie Knuckles and people like that, they all used to go to balls. You know, Larry Levan was the father of the House of Luang. And just
I didn't know that.
Yep, he was. Knowing that those connections and stuff, you know, Larry and Frankie Knuckles were good friends. They grew up as teenagers, and may he rest in peace. Frankie was telling me the story that they met helping to sew some beads onto a dress for Duchess Luang when they were teenagers, and they became best friends and stuff like that at a ball.
Oh wow!
And so I just wanted to just throw that connection because so many DJs also had played for the kids and all these places. Andre Collins and stuff.
So many people need to understand where this comes from.
Absolutely.
Our entire this right here, this whole conversation wouldn't be happening if not for Black gay men. This whole thing right here, this moment. So people need to understand that and talk right, speak right, watch what you say.
And that's true, because today
that I got here in New York, I never could have gotten anywhere else.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
It has changed now to go to some of these house music clubs and the people look at you like, you know, like, what are you doing here? And I'm looking at them like, no, what are you doing here?
Right. We built this.
It's always been an open connection.
That's right. Right. We built this city, honey.
Exactly, honey.
Well, before we sign off, because you two, me and Cynthia barely had to do anything. You two have just gone off, and it was wonderful hearing you both speak. It was so. It really, really was, because you gave us so much information, and it was just so entertaining and just really, thank you.
It's Lee.
Archie, I have a quick question for you. Archie, what is that behind you that looks like, because it looks like my snake and I can't stop looking at it.
Oh, yes. My wife is notorious for leopard prints. So
I was like, does Archie have a snake like mine? What is happening right here?
Giraffe print though, right? No? Is that like a giraffe print?
Yeah, it's like a giraffe print.
It's like a snake print because mine is a snake.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, I love that.
Oh my God, I didn't even see that.
I love that. Oh, good. That would be a glove for me in the club. Yes.
Well,
I
let's
got
say,
you, Lee. Next time I
meet
see
my
you,
hippo. Let's just say, meet my hippo. What's
you
good?
get-
What's
well,
good?
well, that would be a good fight.
Did y'all have any people that wanted to ask us any questions before we?
We did. I got questions in the chat, but we're gonna keep on going because it's like okay, so
Go ahead, questions. Thank you, Lee.
question I had was for you, Archie, and it is from our very good friend Luce, who asks,
Bruce Louis.
he asked, were you influenced by martial arts movies back when you started?
Yeah, damn right. The history goes like this. In 1972, the first kung fu martial arts movie by Run Run Shaw Brothers that came to America was Five Fingers of Death. That changed all underground culture. It changed b-boy culture. Really wasn't b-boy back then, but all the hood kids. That movie changed everybody's movement overnight. That movie changed it overnight. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So true. We used to go to 42nd Street. There used to be a theater, and that's all they played. And then, and we
$5.
and I don't know if I remember. Then on TV, they had the drive-in movie thing used to come on TV, and used to be all of those child wouldn't go out of the house until after I watched all of that. And
The
then
drive-in theater, that changed the way I played with my friends.
And when I was 15, because back in those days, people used to jump you for your money. So the hood boys used to say, yo, you got a dime? All I find, all I keep. That's why I was very surprised when that movie came out in Netflix, the one that, God rest his soul, little Ray was in, Voodoo Ray.
Oh,
The Get Down?
yes.
To get when they said that little thing about, yo, you got a dime, all I found, all I keep, I was shocked because honestly, unless you've lived that life, you wouldn't know what that means. So somebody did their homework.
Well, the breakdown was very authentic.
Really, really
Get
well.
down. It was very authentic.
And because they used to do that, my mom decided that she was going to put me, when I was 15 years old, put me in the martial arts. So I studied Kyokushinkai-kan karate for 7 years and Ishinryu karate for 2 years. Because when I left ballet, because I just couldn't deal with this whole, revealing thing and just being around the discipline.
Named you with the red Superman tights.
Yeah. So after that, I was a meek kid. I was skinny and tall. And what do you do with skinny and tall kids? They pick on you. Because I had a deep voice when I was a kid. They used to call me Lurch, which was kind of messed up after the Addams Family, because the story is, when I was born, all the other babies were going, wah, wah, wah. And I went, and I thought there was something that was wrong with me. The doctors thought there was something that was wrong. I said, well, what's wrong with the kid? That was Bendito. Yeah, that was my voice at the time.
Bendito.
Bendito, that was my voice.
I just want you to know, Archie, it's not that you couldn't deal with the ballet and the whole, is that they couldn't.
Right.
I didn't even know that then. That's why today,
if I have one regret, you were a kid.
If I do have one regret, the regret is that I did not know, my parents did not know how to empower me. Because if I knew how to empower myself, I would have stayed with that skill set and had just something else layered on top of who I already am now. I did try to go back, and I do mess around a little in ballet, so I do ballet-ish, because I still have and the reason why I got into martial arts is that's where I got my split from. That's where I got my extension from, the martial arts. So yes, Luce Louis, you're correct. That has a major influence in my DNA because I got shamed out of ballet. And look at the ballet dancers now. They're beautiful. They're athletes. Their bodies, they're amazing. It just didn't happen for me.
So Lee, we had one more question from Luce also, and that question is, do you think that the future of nightlife should go back to this membership only, or this kind of format?
I think to preserve a culture, yes. To preserve a culture, yes. Word of mouth carries a lot of weight.
Yeah.
I'm going to say
people don't think so, but it does. Go ahead, Lee.
I was going to say there's a lot of factors to the change in nightlife. And I necessarily don't think necessarily it's all going to be an easy journey to go back. One of the things I'm going to definitely say is the invention of cell phones. And whereas people came there and a party got a chance to have a vibe of its own and grow and nurture, today's generation, they're there for 5 minutes when they got their cell phones out, and if 1,000 people ain't in there, when they rushing through the door, honey, they ready to go someplace else, which is really bad. They don't give a place the time that it really needs to kind of grow and nurture. So that's one of the things that I necessarily think that's not necessarily going to go away. I think that also today there's so many alternative things that has happened as far as opened up for entertainment wise. This generation is so about social media and stuff and going live, and it has impacted the way music is released. It has impacted going to the movies. It has impacted everything, and it has impacted nightlife because, again, even going to a ball, people decide, well, I'm not traveling to that ball because they know somebody's going to go live, and you can sit in your living room and watch the whole ball from your living room. So the culture is different. It's going to take a long time to have to change where those themed circuit parties and stuff, that's, to me, is what made Funkbox and Soulgasm very unique and special to why your parties had a certain life. So I think that Funkbox, first of all, the fact that it really targeted dancers, to give them a space to come and they can dance in any form that they, especially if they're professionals or not, to go to a place where they could sit back and admire other dancers and their styles and come and present their style and be completely appreciated in a nightclub setting. Genius. Soulgasms, the fact that people could actually just come to, it didn't matter what your sexuality was. It was about the fact that you always had these DJs that understand that for people who are real house heads, it's about that rhythm. And it's about honing into watching the dancers. You're taking the dancers on a journey, but I hate when a DJ got his whole personal thing and he just starts playing whatever he wants to play in his head and not watching the crowd. At Soulgasm, the DJs understood the rhythm of the crowd and when to bring that tempo up to bring everybody to a frenzy and how to bring it down towards the end of the night. Soulgasm was a soulgasm. You go in there and you're going to have a soulgasm because the music was amazing. And I always went there and found that no matter what part of house music you like, the tribal or whatever, you got to have a taste of that experience. If you ballroom kids and you want that beat, some point in that night, you're going to get some beats. You know, you always found the rhythm of that. Soulgasm is very unique. So I think that it's going to take more niche parties like that to kind of help to rekindle where nightlife is at, because right now we're dying. All the spaces are closed, they're gone, and even though the cabaret thing has been gotten rid of, where are these spaces going to be? You know, what I mean, it would take a lot of money to get liquor licenses and permits and stuff to reopen and reestablish nightlife.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, and you know, when Manhattan got so blown up with that, other boroughs now became options. You know, Brooklyn, everybody started going to Brooklyn now because
they rezoned everything out in New York, and then everything got zoned out there in Brooklyn. And you're right. And so, but I'm going to say this generation doesn't, like Archie, you said it earlier. We used to travel to Jersey. We would travel to the Bronx. We would travel to anywhere for a good party. Today, they don't necessarily go. They don't travel like that. They don't have to.
Wow.
That's the point. They don't have to. Cell phones, we cannot underestimate the power of having a whole computer in your hand. People just don't have to do it anymore. And
instant gratification thing.
Right.
Yeah. But I do think that people are going to be coming out of the pandemic. People are definitely itching for social interaction.
Right.
Yes.
It will be the perfect time to start thinking about how to create these type of spaces again.
Yes, I agree. Perfect.
Well, I think for the city, in the actual city, creating them I don't know, unless people can afford it, it's not even about creating them. You simply just can't afford it. Right before the pandemic, I was doing a party in the Bronx called Just Right, and Just Right Love Party with DJ Butch SOS. What's up, Butch?
Hey,
And
Butch.
with Chris, and but it was sort of grimy. It was old school. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't lights and action, and it was exactly what we wanted. It was exactly what we wanted.
Woo.
Oh, so
And
good.
you know, it
Just right.
it was just right.
It really
It was
was.
just right. That's how the name came.
It really was.
Wow.
So I have one last question from the chat from a friend of ours called Nerdish Tendency James. He asked, within the last 3 years, New York City appointed a nightlife commissioner who was supposed to begin trying to help with all the issues that we have addressed. The pandemic has thrown everything out of the window, but what sort of efforts or partnerships do you imagine could be struck between the community and the city to help sustain the culture? And do you even think, my part of that question is, do you even think the city has any interest in that?
I'm gonna tell you straight up. The city is only interested in money. It has no interest in the culture at all. And I hate to say it like a definite answer, but that's exactly what it is. We have to fight for our spaces. The dialogue, if anything, will always come down to you have to reduce these prices. You have to. In order for a culture to survive, the prices that you're asking, the culture cannot survive those prices for a venue. The moment you speak money, they're going, oh, well, yeah, but
Yep.
you can't do that. So,
Yeah.
so basically, what I'm saying is going back to old school when you're doing these little speakeasies, that are creating a vibe that are creating something that there's a need for the people. Only when, once again, only even though it's been proven, only when there's a need where people draw to something, then somebody wants to address it because it's like a runaway train. It got so out of hand, you know? So we have to start from scratch. It sucks, but it's about money. It's always about money.
It definitely is definitely about money, and the people have to understand the background behind why this nightlife commissioner and stuff, the position even came to be in the conversation. And and of course, ultimately, like as I said, the cabaret law now has been abolished and stopped being applied to nightlife, which was something that Giuliani wielded during the 90s to close a lot of the venues. I think ultimately New York State and New York realized that they lost tourism. They lost a lot of tax dollars and stuff because New York no longer became that destination. This is where nightlife began. This is where it started. This is where everybody, no matter where you went, wanted to have a New York style club.
New York
It all
experience.
began
Yep.
here. And so the demise of nightlife and closing all these venues stopped. Even the bridge and tunnel, people coming into New York stopped. Like
Yeah.
you said, now
Yeah.
I could stay in New Jersey and get the same experience I'm getting in New York because now New York is just nothing significant like the way nightlife was happening
Exactly.
here anymore. And so if anything, the nightlife commissioner and them have got to recognize is the amount of tourists that was lost here coming to New York because of nightlife, the fact of people that were traveling from the tri-state area that would come into New York every weekend starting on a Thursday coming into New York ended, or definitely decreased. And the fact that also in New York, other states, it was 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock that nightlife ended. Nightlife in New York ended at 4. And then, if you stopped serving liquor, it went on past that and you had after hour clubs, all of that disappeared. And so, yes, how do you revive an industry? How do you get tourists and people to come back to New York is to figure, yeah, well, we got to have a commission, someone to focus on how to recreate that. But again, I often say to people,
We can't.
right, we can't. Is it too late? Are we trying to correct something 10 and 20 years too late? You understand? Because this should have been done. This should have been done at least 10 or 15 years ago.
Well,
trying to do it.
I agree with you, and I think part of what the nightlife commissioner is going to have to do, if anything, is recognize at least our part, because unfortunately I hate to separate, but our part as the art of it all. We're art form, because there's a, I don't want to separate us because we're all from the same, but there is a difference between what happened at the tunnel and what happened at Pasha and what happened at, say, the Roxy, where, remember, there was a time when Pasha had an ambulance sitting outside for every party.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is where a lot of problems come from. That was never us. And so, but we were affected by that. Right. And so all of those things, they're going to have to figure out a way for, we're still doing it. And we look at it as an art form. And that's where, you have to kind of differentiate.
Actually, the circuit parties too. There was always an ambulance. I was fortunate enough to perform with Jana. She's like my sister, Jana, she was one of the singers of Tribal House.
Mm-hmm.
She's sung background for all of these artists.
I love her.
I was a background dancer, and I was privileged to see what a circuit party is. They pay $75, $85. These muscle boys all get around. They huddle together in one whole crowd, jump up and down, do their drugs. Some enjoy the music, but just that whole scene is a totally different vibe. Totally different. The same way I was exposed to Electric Circus. Totally different vibe. One thing that I realize is that regardless whichever genre it is, people always need that release. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that is common among all of that. You cannot kill a nightlife without knowing that people need a release.
Right.
That's how we're in business. That's how we're able to live our lives. Going back to the beginning of time, human beings need release. So this commissioner, obviously, he has to understand that in order for people to have access to release, that red tape has got to slip up somewhere. You have to figure out how to make it easier for a process to happen. That takes work. And
one thing about the commissioner of New York City nightlife is Ariel Palitz. She is the former owner of Sutra Lounge on First Avenue and First Street. So, although I think that there's definitely a disconnect, right, from the mayor's office to what is actually happening in the street. I think that there is also something to be said for having somebody who has seen and experienced from that side, right? Now, does that mean that she's going to get everything addressed that we need addressed? Hell no, because they ain't going to even want to hear it.
No.
Right? But it does mean that some of the basic stuff might get so I was really proud of New York City when this pandemic started with how how they addressed people in nightlife that were out of work.
Right.
And how they tried to help us,
Yeah.
Because still, I don't have a job. Red don't have a job. This is what we're doing, right? We rely on tips. And
we don't have jobs, people, so drop that donation when you see it. Go.
But what I'm saying is and we continue to do this stuff because this is our passion and we still love it. And we know, like you just said, Archie, the importance of what we need, right?
Yes.
So we're going to keep doing it because it's we got to keep doing it. This is it. This is what we need, right? This is what's going to keep us sane. This is what's going to keep us alive, right? So, but I wonder if there's something that we could say, if there was one thing that you could say to her, yo, could you make sure that we do this? What would that be?
Oh, a very simple notion. Can you make sure that you would hear us and not dismiss us? Because what tends to happen is all of these things that come to this, to a person, it's okay, well, that's really not on my radar right now. We need to do this. No, that's not what we're saying. We're giving you the heart and soul of where we are right now and what we need. Those voices, just because she's the commissioner, exactly like you said, she's not necessarily hearing your voice to address that particular issue that affects a big genre of this scene.
Right.
She's concerned with other things. My wish is listen, address it. That's all. Give the same priority that you would give your other thing to this thing. It's just as relevant. Matter of fact, even more so important.
Yeah,
That's
I think that one of the things that is kind of missing is, and I'm gonna bring it back to these circuit parties and these large scale events, um,
Mhm.
because I've been lucky and fortunate to say that for the last 12, 13 years, I've been a host at the Black Party. Um,
Oh,
and the Black Party is always a 15 to 16-hour event. And it's been going on for 40 years. And for the last 12, I've been one of the hosts. It's a huge party. You're talking thousands of people come there. And the Saint at Large has been doing this party for many years. It was at Roseland, and then it had to move into, you know, warehouse spaces in Brooklyn to now he has this big, huge space that they've been using up in the Bronx. Um, these things, Allegria, you talked about Electric Circus,
exactly.
the Zoo Party. Um, there's another one that they had actually tried to book me for that was at the arena in downtown Brooklyn. It's a big circuit party that travels the world. These large parties are destination parties. These are parties that people travel around the world to come to New York to experience. So
Yes.
it increases tourism besides the fact of so many other factors of employing so
Right.
many people, dancers and performers and DJs. The Black Party, the Saint brings in some of the biggest names and DJs from around the world, and not just one or two for that party. You're talking 3 and 4. You know what I mean? Like, it's attracting people from around the world to come here. This is why thousands of people want to be in New York to attend these type of events. If you're talking about trying to what can be done, it's trying to find ways to facilitate, all of these large venues are gone. They're simply gone. And the fact that they're using places in the Bronx and Brooklyn and stuff like that, yeah, they're good. But now people that travel here have issues around safety.
Exactly.
When things was happening in the city, people felt comfortable that there was access to cabs, trains, or whatever. And now you got a place to go to in the Bronx. Well, you really got to take a cab there because there ain't no real bus or something to get where the Black Party is. Even if you get
Manhattan
up
is
to the Bronx
considered
where it is, you
territory.
still gotta travel and walk into areas and places to get to a space that may not be
Exactly.
safe from somebody that's coming here from Amsterdam or someone that's coming here from London because they don't know how to navigate New York the way we do as New Yorkers. You understand?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
and so how do you, think about all the places we lost? Copacabana. I could just go down a line and talk about all of these venues that I have worked at, which had beautiful large spaces that are gone. How do we rekindle or create an opportunity um, that we can have some of those spaces again?
Give
And,
special
and
discounts
at
to those
reasonable
places.
at reasonable prices, because there are still a few places that we can get, and those venues, and I know because I try to get them for Black Pride, they want 20, 30, and $40,000 for those venues.
Ooh.
So if you're paying that much money at the door to get that venue, you already making it unattainable to have an event.
You still have to pay the staff. You still have to pay the talent. You still have to. That's just a venue that you're
That's just the venue.
Yep.
realistically.
Don't forget security, and then they'll tell you how many security guards you need.
Yep, that's right.
That's right.
Right. That's
Okay.
right.
So it's
It's getting
unbelievable.
late, guys. So I have one question.
Yes.
And please, just the short answer to this question, because I know this could be the short answer. Scott Commodity wanted to know what have been your favorite, I'm going to shorten his question. What has been your favorite party through the decades through the decades to today that you have been to?
Sound Factory Bar.
What'd you say?
The Sound Factory Bar.
Really wonderful.
Oh wow. So
Right, you didn't think it was going to be that short, did you?
no. The thing is, for
Told you.
me, I look at things during decades. So yes, the Sound Factory Bar defined that time for me, but it also was nothing like to me, Paradise Garage. There was nothing like Roseland, working the black party at Roseland, and the amazing stuff that has gone on at that party is unbelievable.
Okay. And as I have to say, I went to the black party one time, and it was at Roseland.
In the Roselands.
Excellent.
Oh man, this
Short enough for you. What was it?
Thank you, Archie.
my last thing that I just want to ask you is if there's something that you want to share with the audience with regard to something that you have coming up or something that you just want them to know about. Okay, so.
It is not over until it's over. So, as we wind down with this thing, me personally, I don't do the Zoom classes much because I have an issue with the delay and rhythm and all of that stuff. But I will be known to sooner or later concede and do something. I'll just say that.
I think for me, I just want to say to people, don't give up on nightlife. There's nothing like going out to a club and experience a DJ playing music and connecting to other people and dancers, having that experience. No, Zoom doesn't work for me, and Bigo or Bigo, however you pronounce it, and some of these other sites, they don't work for me. I need to hear that thumping. I need to feel the bass make my heart change my breathing. I need to sweat. I need to see other people dance. I need that interaction. Don't give up on nightlife. There's nothing like it.
Don't give up on nightlife. Yep, I'm feeling it.
Okay. And Cynthia, Scott has popped back in to say that question was also for you and I.
Oh shit. Okay.
So you keep your answer short. Thanks.
There are many places that I love for different reasons. Like, I would have to say, like, I loved Nell's. I really did love that place.
Yeah. Yes.
Nell's, in that era, and like later eras, there was I loved Sullivan Room. I loved Santos.
Oh,
And
Yes.
There, and there's so many places like and so many parties that I've had, like, there definitely have been DJs that I've followed over the years that it's like, okay, I know this one is going to give me just what I need, so
follow the DJs, people, not the club.
yeah. Well, to answer you, Scott, for me, I would say vinyl.
Oh,
Yes.
And I loved Shelter on 39th Street.
oh,
that one too.
And I'm just gonna stop there because there's more, but I'll go with that.
Mm.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank
Love
you both. This has been amazing and wonderful. And yeah, we didn't have to do much. You guys just went for it, and that was great. So many lessons and so many fun facts.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you
have
both so much.
I need, especially you, Archie. You need a TED Talks, and you need.
And Lee, I'd like to see a documentary about you getting this stuff to the museum.
Smithsonian, right?
Follow that journey. I'm
That's
just
the
saying.
thing he ain't telling you. All right, Lee. All right.
We hopefully
Wrong.
we're gonna keep that energy out there that it all's gonna come to fruition. So,
Right, a documentary that takes me to opening night.
Put it out there. Put it out there.
Dope.
Yeah.
you'd be
And
surprised.
Archie, you are a documentary, so
Mhm.
all of it.
Yes.
And
And
thank
a very good storyteller.
you to everybody that joined us tonight for Bedtime Stories. This has been really
Thanks,
wonderful.
everybody. Thanks, Butch and Des and Echo and late Stacy
Echo,
coming in with a lot of
Stacy,
things to
what's up?
say.
Yeah, lots.
How many people are out
For hanging
there?
out with us so late. Rob Bass, all of you.
Rob Bass, work. How many
right.
people out there? I can't even see from here.
Yeah,
Right now,
Sony and Tony and lots of good people. Ian Friday.
woo,
Oh, lots of good people
a
joined
lot
us.
of people listening. In and out, in and out. Kat was here earlier talking about what you were talking about, Kat Alaya.
Well, we love
Mariella.
every last one of y'all. That's for damn sure. Family, is that what we are?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we are.
Yes.
Yep. That is what we are. So
And
thank you both.
I am Sin Rose, and that is.
Hello, I'm Red, and good night. Thank you all very much.
Good
It's
night.
been great.
This has been Bedtime Stories with Lee Souljah and Archie Burnett, and we are so happy to have had them. And thank you all for joining us.
And La La Ha, I see your name all the time, and you're saying thank you, but I don't know who you are. Who are you? Tell me your name.
That's
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
It's bedtime.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and wait, we don't want to end the meeting. We want to stop.